I slept with him. What are you going to do about it? She snorted. I smiled and said, "Thank you for making this easy." Her face went pale after I handed her divorce papers I'd had prepared earlier and played the recording of her confession. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The glass of my 18-year-old Macallan looked obscene in her hand. Not because she was drinking it. We'd shared that bottle on our anniversary, but because of the way she held it. A prop. A weapon. She leaned against the kitchen island, the granite we'd picked out together, her hip cocked in a posture of pure challenge. I slept with him. What are you going to do about it? She snorted after she said it. A short, derisive puff of air through her nose. The defiance in her eyes wasn't the hot, messy kind from too much wine. It was cold, calculated. She was waiting for the explosion. For 7 years, I knew every micro-expression on Sarah's face. The crinkle of frustration when she couldn't find her keys. The soft, sleepy bloom of happiness in the morning. This was a new mask. One carved from contempt and a strange, giddy bravery. My heart didn't hammer. It didn't break. It simply sank, like a stone dropped into a frozen lake, leaving a hole so deep and cold all sound vanished. The only thing left was the echo of her words and the eerie, spreading calm. "I see," I said, my voice disturbingly even to my own ears. "You see," she mocked, taking a sip of my scotch. "That's all you have to say? I just told you I fucked another man. Mark. From my spin class. For the last 3 months. Mark." The name was a punchline. A bland, gym rat name I'd heard in passing. Going for drinks with the group from class. "Mark says this new place has amazing keto cocktails." I'd been an idiot. But not for the reason she thought. I thought of the last 6 months. The late nights I'd pulled at the firm, not for some grand ambition, but for the house fund spreadsheet pinned to our fridge. Her dream home. A porch, a big yard, a kitchen with a double oven. Every extra hour was a brick in that future. I'd come home tired, my head full of contract clauses, to find her already in bed, facing away, phone glow on her cheeks. "Long day," I'd whisper. You're always tired now." Then, the new lexicon. Phrases that felt foreign on her tongue. "You have to speak my love language, James. I need a partner who feeds my energy, not drains it." They were accusations wrapped in therapy speak, always delivered with a sigh that made my support feel like a burden. The night it crystallized was 2 weeks ago. I'd found a receipt in her jeans while doing laundry, a $300 charge from the Loron, a downtown hotel bar. When I'd asked, gently, if she'd had a work thing there, her reaction was a masterpiece. She'd spun, hands on hips. "God, are you checking up on me now? Can't I have a drink with a friend without the 3rd degree? This is exactly why I feel suffocated." I'd backed down. Apologized. This suffocated line was a kryptonite she'd recently discovered. But tonight, the trip I'd left for yesterday, the regional audit in Cincinnati, got canceled last minute due to a client emergency. I'd driven home, thinking maybe I'd surprise her, order that fancy sushi she liked, open a bottle of wine, and just talk. Really talk. The house was dark. Her car was in the driveway. An odd stillness hung in the air. I called her name. Nothing. That's when I saw it. On the entryway table, a matchbook from the Loron, perched neatly on top of her discarded clutch. It wasn't hidden. It was placed. A tacit, almost arrogant clue. So I waited. I didn't pace. I didn't cry. I sat in the living room armchair, in the dark, and I waited. The strange calm from the frozen lake filled me up. She came in at 2:07 a.m. The click of her heels, the jangle of her keys, the smell of night air and a stranger's cologne. She flipped the light on, saw me, and jumped. "Jesus, James. You scared me. What are you doing sitting in the dark?" Her voice was too loud, too sharp. "Trip was canceled," I said, standing. "Where were you?" A flicker of fear, then instant, molten anger. "Out. With friends." "Do I need to report my movements to you now, Warden?" "You were at the Loron." She blinked. Then her eyes darted to the table, seeing the matchbook. Her face hardened into something ugly and triumphant. The mask clicked into place. "So? It's a public bar. You said you were working late tonight. You texted, heads down on the quarterly reports, don't wait up." "I didn't want you to worry," she shot back, but it was a perfunctory lie. She was already moving past it, towards the fight she wanted. She strode to the kitchen, poured 2 fingers of my best scotch, a statement, and turned to face me. What do you want me to say, James? That I needed to be somewhere I wasn't being micromanaged? Somewhere people actually know how to have fun. And so it began. The redirect. The blame. It was my fault for working too much. My fault for being emotionally unavailable. My fault for being a safe, predictable bet that had become a prison sentence. Each barb was designed to wound, to provoke the reaction that would justify her next move. I let her talk. I absorbed it. The calm inside me grew colder, clearer. Finally, I asked the simple, direct question. The one she'd been dancing around. Sarah, are you seeing someone else? She slammed the glass down. You want the truth? The raw, unfiltered truth you're always begging for? Fine. Mark is everything you're not. He's spontaneous. He's exciting. He sees me. He wants me. You just maintain me. Like a fucking project on your to-do list. A house plant you water out of obligation. The words were meant to eviscerate. And they did. But they also cut through the last of the fog. This wasn't a stumble. This was a choice. A demolition. I looked at her, this stranger in my wife's skin, her chest heaving with manufactured passion. Are you saying you're having an affair? I asked, my voice flat. A clinical question. That's when the snort came. The eye roll. The final, glorious overplay of her hand. She leaned back, swirling the amber liquid, a queen dismissing a peasant. I slept with him. A pause for effect, her eyes locking onto mine, hungry for the devastation. What are you going to do about it? The silence stretched. She leaned forward, expecting tears, shouts, maybe begging. The script called for it. I felt it then, not anger, not sorrow. A profound, almost dizzying relief. The prison door wasn't just unlocked. She'd gleefully ripped it off its hinges. My lips curved. Not a smirk. Not a grin. A small, tired, utterly genuine smile of gratitude. Thank you, I said softly. The mask on her face faltered. The triumphant glow in her eyes sputtered and died, replaced by a flicker of pure, uncomprehending confusion. The script was wrong. Her line had been delivered, but I hadn't recited mine. The infuriating betrayal was complete, and she had no idea she'd just given me the only thing I needed: incontestable, undeniable freedom. The silence after my thank you was thicker than the scotch in her glass. Sarah blinked, the confusion on her face morphing into a flicker of irritation. I hadn't followed the script. I hadn't thrown a fit, hadn't collapsed, hadn't given her the dramatic fuel she needed to paint herself as the liberated victim of a stodgy, unfeeling husband. Thank you, she repeated, the words tasting sour. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means you've made everything perfectly clear, I said, my voice still that same, steady monotone. There's no more ambiguity. No more working on it. No more doubt. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, not with the hurried, angry stomp she expected, but with a deliberate, calm pace. I heard her heels click on the tile behind me. Where are you going? We're not done, she demanded, her bravado cracking around the edges. I didn't answer. I walked down the short hall to my office, the small second bedroom I'd used for remote work. My space. I'd spent countless hours in here, not just working, but planning, preparing, hoping I was wrong, but knowing, deep in my gut, that I needed to be ready if I was right. The sleek, black lawyer's folder was in the top drawer of my desk, right where I'd left it 3 weeks ago, after my second consultation with Diane Everson, a divorce attorney known for being a calm, surgical tactician. I picked it up. It had a satisfying, final weight. When I turned, Sarah was in the doorway, her arms crossed, but the pose looked defensive now, not defiant. What is that? She asked, her eyes glued to the folder. I walked back towards the kitchen, forcing her to retreat ahead of me. I placed the folder on the cool granite island between us with a soft, definitive thump. What's this? A letter about your feelings? She sneered, trying to reclaim the high ground. But her gaze was uneasy. Divorce papers, I said. I opened the folder. On top was the summons and complaint, her name and mine in stark, official font. I had my lawyer draw them up 3 weeks ago. I just needed uncontestable grounds. Her breath hitched. 3 weeks, you bastard. You were planning this. I was protecting myself. I corrected gently, almost kindly. You provided the reason. I took my phone from my pocket. My movements were slow, methodical. I opened the voice memo app, found the file labeled H. 10/23, and tapped play. Her own voice, tinny but unmistakably venomous, filled the quiet kitchen. I slept with him. What are you going to do about it? I watched the color drain from her face. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a physical reality. The rosy, flushed anger leached away, leaving her skin a sickly, papery white. Her knuckles, where she gripped the edge of the counter, were bone white. The arrogant tilt of her chin vanished. Her neck seemed to lose the strength to hold her head up. She looked at the phone in my hand as if it were a venomous snake. You recorded me?" The words were a whisper, ragged with disbelief. Then, fury ignited the panic. "You set me up? That's illegal. You can't do that." "Single-party consent state," I said, placing the phone down next to the papers. "I suggest you check the statute. Section 12.4, I believe. As long as one participant in a conversation consents to recording, it's admissible." I consented. Her mouth opened and closed. The legal jargon was a trapdoor she hadn't anticipated. She'd expected a street fight. I'd brought a courtroom. I tapped the papers. "My signature is already notarized. You'll see the terms are more than fair, given the prenuptial agreement we both signed. You keep the car you're driving. A equitable, but not equal, division of the joint savings, the house fund. I keep my retirement accounts. You keep yours. No alimony. Clean and simple." She was shaking her head, not in refusal, but in a dazed, mechanical denial. "A prenup? That was for, you said it was just a formality." "It was insurance," I said. "You're looking at the payout." I reached into the folder and slid out a crisp, ivory business card, paperclipped to the first page. "All further communication regarding this matter will go through my attorney, Diane Everson. Her contact information is there. You have 30 days to retain your own counsel and respond. I'd advise you not to miss the deadline." The sheer, bureaucratic finality of it was my weapon. I wasn't arguing, wasn't yelling. I was administering. I was closing a file. "You can't just..." She stammered, her eyes wild, darting from the papers to my face, searching for the weakness, the hurt, the something she could grab onto. "Where will you go?" "This is your house, too." "I'll be at the Marriott Grand for the week," I said, as if giving a colleague my travel itinerary. "As for here, I suggest you make arrangements to stay with Mark. The locks will be changed by a professional at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The service has already been booked and paid for." That detail, the prepaid locksmith, hit her like a physical blow. The finality of it. The fact that I had not just reacted, but acted, with cold, precise steps while she was bragging about her affair. Her bravado finally shattered. The mask of the liberated woman crumbled into raw, panicked need. "James, wait. Wait. This is insane. We can talk about this. You're my husband." It was the first time she'd used that word with any semblance of its true weight all night. It was 7 years too late. I didn't answer. I walked past her, back into the living room. By the front door, where I'd left it hours ago when I came home to an empty house, was a single black duffel bag. Packed. Not with everything, but with enough. Clothes, toiletries, my passport, the external hard drive with all my personal and financial documents, the small fireproof lockbox that held the deeds and the original prenup. She followed me, her heels clicking a frantic staccato on the hardwood. "You can't just walk out. You can't do this." I made a mistake. It was a mistake. I picked up the duffel bag and slung it over my shoulder. I turned to face her one last time in the home we'd built. She was a portrait of collapsing grandeur, mascara starting to smudge, her blouse slightly twisted, all her calculated power evaporated into trembling confusion. "You didn't make a mistake, Sarah," I said, my hand on the cool brass of the doorknob. "You made a choice. And tonight, you proudly told me what it was. I'm simply making mine." I opened the door. The cool night air rushed in, smelling of damp grass and freedom. "Goodbye." I stepped through, pulled the door shut behind me with a soft, solid click. It was the most peaceful sound I'd heard in years. I didn't hear the sob I'm sure followed. I didn't hear the scream of frustration, the shatter of a glass against a door. I was already down the walkway, the weight of the duffel bag on my shoulder feeling infinitely lighter than the weight I'd just left inside. The calm wasn't an act. It was the deep, still silence at the bottom of that frozen lake, finally undisturbed. The war was over before she even knew it had begun, and her grand, defiant confession had been her own signed surrender. The silence in the Marriott room wasn't empty. It was clean. It was a vacuum, sucking out 7 years of ambient noise. The criticism disguised as concern, the sighs of disappointment, the tense pauses that followed my innocent questions. For the first night in years, I slept a deep, dreamless sleep, untethered. The next morning, I followed the plan. I emailed my boss, Martin, a man who'd seen his own divorce play out in the break room, dealing with an urgent personal matter. We'll be remote for the rest of the week. All projects are on track. His reply was swift. Take the time you need. HR has the EAP number if you need it. No questions asked. Professional dignity. It was a language I understood. I didn't block Sarah immediately. I observed. For one day, my phone was a live wire of her unraveling. It began with denial, texted at 8:03 a.m., just as the locksmith would have been arriving. Sarah, this is a gross overreaction. We need to talk like adults. You can't lock me out of my own home. Then came the legal bluster at 9:47 a.m. Sarah, my lawyer says your recording is illegal harassment. Rescind the filing or we will countersue for emotional distress. I knew Diane Everson would handle that. I didn't respond. The tone shifted by noon as reality seeped in. Sarah, Mark's place is a mess. He has roommates. I can't stay here. Where are my things? Then, the first flicker of panic at 3:15 p.m. Sarah, James. Please. The house is so quiet. Finally, that night, a raw, unvarnished plea, sent at 1:22 a.m. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I'll end it with him today. Just come home. Each message was a wave crashing against a seawall I didn't even know I'd built. I felt nothing but a distant, analytical pity. Not for her, but for the performance. This was the script she should have followed before the confession. Remorse, not triumph. It was too late. After the 1:22 a.m. text, I blocked her number. I deleted my social media apps. I created a new email filter that sent anything from her or her known addresses directly to a folder labeled legal, which I would only check with Diane. The freedom was physical. I started running along the river trail near the hotel. The burn in my lungs felt like purification. I ate when I was hungry, usually at the bar of some casual restaurant, reading a book on my tablet. I reconnected with 2 old college friends for awkward but genuine beers where I simply said, Sarah and I are splitting. It's for the best. They asked no details, just clinked my bottle and said, good to see you, man. A week later, I moved into a furnished, month-to-month apartment in a modern complex across town. It was bland, beige, and entirely my own. The first night there, I sat on the balcony and breathed air that had no history. The updates on her life came through 3 indirect channels. Channel 1, the mutual friend. A week after I left, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe, who'd been more Sarah's friend, but was decent enough. Chloe, hey James, I don't want to be in the middle, but Sarah is not doing well. She's telling everyone you had a paranoid breakdown, that you're making up the cheating because you couldn't handle her personal growth. She says you trapped her with a recording. People are listening. I stared at the message. The narrative she was weaving was impressive. The empowered woman, stalked and sabotaged by her insecure, controlling husband. I typed out a long, defensive reply. Then I deleted it. I wrote a new one. Me. Thanks, Chloe. I have a sworn affidavit and a digital recording of her specific, detailed confession. I won't be debating the facts publicly or privately. I hope you're well. The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared. They reappeared. Chloe, an affidavit? Shit. Okay. I won't bother you again. Take care. She never relayed another message. The first flying monkey had landed, seen the evidence, and flown away. Channel 2, the digital graveyard. Curiosity, that vile itch, got me once. I reinstalled Instagram on a burner account I used for market research. Sarah's profile was public. Her feed was a museum of her crumbling narrative. The week I left, a defiant selfie, caption, when you finally choose yourself. The vibes are immaculate. Sparkles, it was at Mark's messy apartment, a red Solo cup on the counter behind her. 2 weeks later, a quote graphic. Not everyone deserves your truth. 3 weeks in, a blurry photo of a wine glass. Learning who your real friends are is the universe's toughest gift. The likes were dwindling. Then, a month after D-Day, a new post. A photo of her hand, No wedding ring. Resting on a legal-looking document. Caption: Fighting for my truth. Hashtag resilience. It was the most transparent, pathetic piece of theater. She was trying to curate her downfall into a heroine's journey. The comments were a mix of vague heart emojis from distant acquaintances and suspicious silence from people who actually knew us. I closed the app, deleted it again. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion from a mile away. There was no schadenfreude, only a dull confirmation. Channel 3, Diane Everson's clinical summaries. This was the main event. Diane's emails were masterpieces of detached competence. Service. Documents were successfully served to respondent, Sarah, at her place of temporary residence, address noted, 22B, Clark Street, Apt 4. Service acknowledged by a Mark Dobson. So, she was at his place. Good. Response. Respondent has retained counsel, Andrew Finch. He has filed a motion to dismiss based on fraudulent inducement regarding the prenuptial agreement and illegally obtained evidence. We have scheduled a hearing for 30 days. Our position is strong. The prenup is ironclad and the recording is permissible. They are posturing. Discovery. In the spirit of transparency and to encourage settlement, we provided respondents' counsel with a copy of the recording, as well as your travel records and credit card statements which corroborate your timeline and disprove any claim of abandonment. After review, Attorney Finch has withdrawn the motion to dismiss. He is now requesting mediation for asset division. I could read between Diane's sterile lines. Sarah's lawyer had heard her voice, sneering and defiant, on that recording. He'd seen the evidence. He'd told her the case was a loser. The bluster was over. The final email from Diane before the silent period was the most telling. Personal note. Respondent's counsel has informally indicated his client is experiencing significant personal upheaval and requests a pause in proceedings. He noted the third party involved, Mark Dobson, is no longer residing at the Clark Street address and is, in fact, not responding to her communications. We have not agreed to a pause. The clock is ticking on her response. We proceed. I read that line 3 times. No longer residing, not responding to her communications. So Mark, the exciting upgrade, the man who understood her, had done what men like him do. He'd taken what he wanted from a willing married woman and evaporated the moment that woman came with baggage, specifically, the baggage of a homeless, legally entangled, emotionally volatile mistress. He'd gotten the thrill of the conquest and bolted when maintenance was required. The poetic justice was so perfect it felt almost cliché. She had discarded me for a fantasy and had, in turn, been discarded by it. The house of cards she'd built on defiance and delusion had collapsed, leaving her alone in the rubble. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt nothing. The man who would have felt something, rage, pity, smug satisfaction, had been left in that house with the granite countertops. The man in the beige apartment felt only a deepening sense of peace. Her chaos was no longer my circus. Her consequences were not my concern. I used the house fund money, now just the fund, as a down payment on a sleek, new motorcycle. Something Sarah would have never allowed. On weekends, I rode. The world became a roar of wind and a blur of trees, scouring the last remaining echoes of her voice from my mind. The quiet middle wasn't a pause. It was the foundation of a new life, poured in silence, strong enough to build anything upon. And as I rode, I realized I wasn't waiting for karma to hit her. I was simply, finally gone. The silence from my end was absolute. A void. And nature, as they say, abhors a vacuum. Sarah's life had become one, and she began throwing everything she had into mine, trying to create noise, a reaction, a crack in the wall. Attempt 1, the mistake gambit. A new number lit up my phone 6 weeks after I'd left. I'd changed my number, but she'd clearly gotten it from an old mutual account or a desperate plea to a confused relative. The text came through on a Tuesday evening. Unknown number. James, this has gone too far. We need to talk. It was a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake. You're my husband. We took vows. This isn't who we are. It was the first draft of her new narrative. The mistake framework. It was meant to sound raw, but it felt rehearsed. I didn't reply. I simply blocked the number. The act was becoming routine, almost meditative. Attempt 2, the Flying Monkey Squadron. 3 days later, my personal email, which I kept strictly for friends and family, pinged with a message from her mother, Linda. The subject line was, "Please, James." The email itself was a masterclass in benevolent manipulation. "James, sweetie, it's Linda. I hope you're well. I'm writing not as her mother, but as someone who loves you both. She's a mess. Truly. She made a terrible error in judgment. But my God, haven't we all? You took vows, for better or worse. This is the worse. Can't you find it in your heart to be the bigger man, to forgive? She's spiraling. She needs you. She loves you. This legal war is destroying her. Please, just call me. Let's talk this through like the family we are." I read it once. The tone, the faux concern, the appeal to my supposed obligation, the gentle chiding to be the bigger man, a phrase that always meant succor, itched at a old, compliant part of me. That part was smaller now. I hit delete. I did not apologize. I did not express sympathy. I vanished the plea into the digital ether. If Linda was her general, her troops were deserting. Attempt 3, the bribed gatekeeper and the angry plea. A week later, a LinkedIn connection request. From Mark Dobson. My eyebrow nearly hit my hairline. The message attached was terse, clearly dictated or heavily influenced. "James. Mark here. Look, this is awkward. Sarah is staying with me, and it's not working out. She's crying all the time, man. She says you have all the money locked up. She just wants to talk to you, to apologize. Can you just call her? For everyone's sanity. I'll give you my new number below." So, Mark was back in the picture, or she'd somehow wheedled her way back to him, and he was now so inconvenienced he was acting as her secretary. The sheer, pathetic transparency of it was almost funny. He wanted his easy life back, and she was the price of admission. I ignored the request. I didn't block him. I let the pending notification sit there, a monument to his irrelevance. Her next email to my lawyer-filtered address was pure, unfiltered fury born of panic. Subject, enough. You win, okay? You humiliated me legally and you've humiliated me with my friends. You've frozen me out financially. Are you happy now? Have you proven your point? I'm losing everything. My home, my friends, my dignity. Now can we please talk like two adults who shared a life and fix this? Or are you really that cruel? It was the sound of a gambler who'd lost her last chip, trying to blame the dealer. I forwarded it to Diane with a 2-word note. As expected. Diane's reply. The settlement conference is scheduled. Her tone will change there. Attempt 4, the ambush. 2 months to the day after I'd walked out, she found me. I'd moved into a permanent condo, a modern high-rise with a concierge and key fob access for the elevator. I'd chosen it for the silence and the security. I was returning from a long Saturday ride on the motorcycle, helmet in hand, leather jacket worn in, feeling the pleasant ache of miles in my shoulders. As I walked through the polished lobby towards the elevators, a figure uncurled itself from one of the austere lounge chairs. James. She looked diminished. Not ill, but pared down. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun. She wore yoga pants and a hoodie, the uniform of someone who'd given up on presentation. The defiant fire was gone, replaced by a desperate, hollow exhaustion. I stopped, 5 feet between us. "Sarah, you look different," she said, her voice raspy. It was supposed to be an opening, a compliment. It just felt like an observation. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to talk. Please. Just for 5 minutes. You won't answer my calls, my emails. My lawyer's information hasn't changed." "Damn it, James. I'm not a client. I'm your wife." Her voice cracked on the word, rising enough that the concierge, Leo, glanced over discreetly. "You stopped being my wife the moment you decided to be Mark's mistress," I said, not unkindly, just factually. "The paperwork is a formality." Tears welled in her eyes. Real ones, this time. The anger bled out, leaving pure, wretched need. I was lost. I was stupid and insecure, and he flattered me. It was a fantasy. It meant nothing. "You're my reality. You're my husband. I love you." I never stopped. It was the performance of a lifetime, and for a nanosecond, the old neural pathways lit up, the instinct to comfort, to fix. I let the impulse rise and die, unacted upon. "You have a strange way of showing love," I said. "You didn't confess to come clean. You confessed to hurt me, to prove you had power. You wanted to see me break." She shook her head violently. "No, that's not true." "It is," I said, my voice still calm. "And when I didn't break, you panicked. Now you're here not because you love me, but because the fantasy collapsed and you have nowhere else to go. Mark's gone, isn't he? She flinched as if I'd struck her. The confirmation was written in the fresh tears that spilled over. He used me. He's a liar. I know, I said. I could have told you that. But you had to learn it for yourself. She took a shaky step forward. So that's it. After 7 years? You're just a cold, heartless robot? You're just going to let me drown? You never loved me either. This was it. The final lunge. If she couldn't have salvation, she'd settle for making us both villains. She wanted a fight, a messy, emotional brawl where pain was the proof of love. I didn't give it to her. I looked at her, this woman I'd once planned a life with, and felt a vast, untroubled distance. The philosopher in me finally spoke. I did love you, Sarah. Deeply. I loved the woman I believed you were. The woman who was a partner. Who wanted that house with the double oven. I paused, letting the memory of that shared dream hang in the sterile air between us. And when you showed me, with absolute clarity, who you actually were, someone capable of cruelty, of betrayal, of trying to weaponize my love to hurt me, I believed you. I didn't argue. I didn't bargain. I accepted the truth. She stared, mute, the script she'd prepared useless against this quiet certainty. I mourned that man and that marriage already. I continued. In that hotel room the first week, I cried for the future we lost. And then I got up. The legal proceedings, the papers, that's just the administrative echo of a death that already happened. My life now is peaceful. It's mine. I saw the final understanding dawn in her eyes. Not that she had lost me, but that I was already gone. Long gone. She was shouting into a canyon where I no longer lived. I don't hate you, I said, and it was the most devastating thing I could have said, because it was true. I just don't think about you. Your lawyer has the final settlement offer. It's fair. Sign it, and you can start your life over, for real this time. Not as a fantasy, but as a reality. One you build yourself. I turned toward the elevators. James. It was a wail, the last gasp. I turned back, one last time. Leo the concierge was now standing, alert, ready to intervene if I signaled. Goodbye, Sarah. I walked to the elevator, my fob in hand. I didn't look back. I heard a single, choked sob, then the sound of quick footsteps retreating across the marble floor, out through the automatic doors into the indifferent city. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. I stepped in. The doors closed, sealing me in a silent, ascending box. I felt nothing but a profound, unshakable quiet. The war was not just over. The battlefield had been sold, paved over, and a new, sturdy structure now stood in its place. She was not an enemy, not a lover, not a ghost. She was a fact, a resolved item on a ledger that was now closed. Later that week, Diane emailed. Respondent has signed the settlement agreement. All terms accepted. Judgment will be entered next Friday. It's done. I was at a small, sun-drenched cafe when I read it, having coffee with Elena, a woman I'd met a few weeks prior at a bookstore. She was telling me about her upcoming photography exhibit, her hands animated, her eyes bright with passion. I listened, truly listened, and felt a simple, uncomplicated joy. My phone buzzed with Diane's email. I glanced at it, read the two decisive words, "It's done," and felt a final, invisible chain fall away, soundlessly, into the past. I looked back at Elena, who had paused, concerned by my glance at the phone. "Everything okay?" she asked. I smiled, a real, easy smile that started deep within the peace I'd built. "Everything," I said, putting the phone face down on the table, leaving the past in its proper place, "is perfect." The story was no longer about betrayal, or karma, or a cruel confession on a granite countertop. It was about the quiet after the storm, and the new day dawning, clear and full of promise. She was irrelevant, and in that irrelevance, I found my ultimate, quiet victory. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.